in the Florida room.
Yeah,
How'd you guys pick the blockade runner to?
Well, we've been in business last week was 27 years
27
for Grinnell
years?
leadership, and
Oh my gosh.
yeah, so we started out in Chapel Hill,
Okay.
and we did it at the Carolina Inn, which is you may or may not know the Carolina Inn, Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
And so for some reason, we were doing our jump starts there, and we got closed out. Somehow it messed up and just got closed out. So I remember 10 years earlier, I'd come down here with a client for we were facilitating a strategic planning.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I remember this place called the Blockade Runner down at Wrightsville Beach. Let's check it out. So Betsy and a couple of my staff came down here, checked it out, and we decided to do this. We did the workshop, the 4-day jump start.
Yep.
And it was the best jump start we'd ever done. I mean, the level of the intensity, the depth, the challenge was better than anything I'd ever seen before. So I said, this is interesting. And so I said, let's try it again. So the next month we did another one.
Yeah.
We do those every month.
Yeah.
And same effect. It was just really the workshop, the jump start worked better. I did it one more time, and I said, you know what? I think there's something going on here. And what I realized is people come down here, they go into their vacation mindset, they relax. And so when these executives come down and relax, they become less guarded, they become more open, which means learning takes place a lot faster and more readily. So we decided, so for the last 15 years, we've been 1 day a month or 4 or 8 days a month, depending on how many jump starts we do that month down here. I guess they renovated here. They're renovating the Blockade Runner. So for the past 6 months, we were down on the river.
Yeah, which was the session
where
I was
went,
in that group.
right?
Yep.
And I never liked it as well as I like the Blockade Runner. Just something really nice about the Florida room, and just the location here is like the best on the beach because you got the Banks Channel on that side, you got the ocean on that side. So yeah.
And I think I told you I had a Nicholas Montoya onto the podcast like a couple months ago. And
I didn't know that.
And the Blockade Runner was one of the first job I had in Wilmington when I was in
really?
college. Yeah, my first job I started as a busboy in the restaurant. Yeah. Wow. So I've got a pretty good connection.
Well, my older son
well.
Garrett's out there. He takes care of the gardens here. Awesome. He's been doing that he did it for a number of years, then he left for a while, and I just went out and said hello to him a little while ago. So both my boys started working here.
That's
actually.
All. Yeah. I was telling Nicholas, I was like, I wonder how, and he's been here. He was the general manager when I started working here, and I told Nicholas, I was like, man, how many people has the Blockade Runner employed, and under you, how many people have you led and guided, and kids that have these their first jobs and where they are now in the community and what they've been able to contribute to the community.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Well, it's a big part for Nicholas and for the Baggett's before him.
Yeah.
Is all the young kids that come through here, and college kids during the summer, but then the year-round kids are usually like you, high school and
Well, to be sitting here with you today at the Blockade Runner is a really kind of special moment for me. One, having someone like yourself with so much experience and expertise, and I can't wait to learn more about the story of your business.
Ah, great.
And so, Dr. John Grinnell, tell us about Grinnell leadership and how you got started in your personal story.
Well, I think I'll start by telling you what we do now, and then we'll work back from that. So
Perfect.
we really work mostly with smaller to medium-sized companies and divisions of larger companies that has visionary leadership in place. It's been, I'm looking back over the 37 years I've been doing it. That's kind of been the sweet spot for us. And the way we do it is we facilitate leaders and teams and organizations to reach their potential, and it impacts the business. The guy, and years ago, my mentor, I met him when I was 34 years old. Well, actually, I met him when I was 28. When I was 34, after coming back from Japan, I went to work for him. His name was Jim Farr, and arguably probably the finest organizational development consultant of his time during that period. And he took a liking to me, and we kind of went from there. The way I met him was after I quit playing college football for 4 years, I started getting into martial arts. And he was actually my first martial arts teacher.
I did not know
And so I did the martial arts with him for many, many years, and they invited me to one of his workshops, similar to what we do with the Jump Starts. And I just said, wow, this is pretty interesting, kind of fits. And as I tell people, I was a beagle that saw my first rabbit at that time. So I went to graduate school, got my doctorate, and then went to Japan because my area is cultural studies, so I wanted to go check out a very radically different culture. So I went over to Japan for a couple years, came back. Betsy and I came back, and then I went to work for Jim at Farr Associates in Greensboro, North Carolina. And I decided that I was going to at least attempt to learn everything he could teach me over a period of about 10 years, and I did. I'm best at that. And I'm kind of a creative, hard-headed type, so I made the decision to really, take the knowledge and run, as I like to say, and it was the best decision I ever made. So, and then I ran that. I worked with him as a consultant for many years, and then I guess probably I'm going to say the 7th year I was at it, 1994. BB&T, and I was Jim's partner at the end, and the president of Farr Associates, and BB&T was one of our clients, and they bought our company. And that was big talk on Wall Street at the time, like, BB&T buys a behavioral sciences consulting firm. Has John Allison lost his mind? Basically what they said.
Yeah.
But what John Allison knew, which was very smart, was that at that time they had 4 very powerful values that I to this day talk about all the time. I don't know if they carried it forward into the Truist acquisition, but BB&T had 4 values. The first one, and they're foundational, each one rests upon each one. The first one was character. Next one was judgment. The next is judgment. The next is success, and the top one is happiness. And if you have good character, and it leads to success. Good character leads to good judgment, which leads to success, which leads to happiness. And what John knew was that our technology, the jumpstart that you went through, that process, that with enough self-awareness and insight you get from the stuff we do, a human being can actually alter their character, which some people think is impossible, but you can alter your character by becoming aware and then changing your behavior and your decisions, your actions, your mindsets over time. Now, it does change slowly, but you can alter. So what he said is, by buying our firm at that time, that he wanted us to help him grow his company and help his people create even better character than they had. So, and that was during a period when they were doing lots of acquisitions and stuff. We helped them with that kind of stuff too.
How many people would BB&T run through the Farr Associates leadership program?
Well, just like now, we can only have one person from a company at a time. So they were our client for probably 8 years.
Okay.
So they'd have somebody in every workshop. So a couple hundred probably during that period of time.
And they just decided that, hey, we need, what you guys are doing is so important and so special.
Brought it in-house.
We just want to bring it in-house so we can.
Yeah, they bought it in-house, and I ran it for 3 years. Jim was getting older. He was 34 years older than I, so I was part of the deal going in that I would carry it on. But I worked for 3 years for BB&T. They were wonderful to work for. I mean, these guys are awesome. Just really good people, good-hearted people. They remind me of one of my clients that I have today, which my client is First Citizens Bank, is very similar in terms of the culture, the people, the honesty, the integrity. So, but anyway, they carried it forward. I did it 3 years, but then I decided that I was traveling so much and stuff that my first son, Garrett, who you know, and then Grant shortly after that was born, and I just wanted to control my travel more. Yeah. So that's when I started Grinnell Leadership back in 1997. And so just last week was our 27th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so 27 years. I can't believe how fast it went by. So.
I know. So did you always know you wanted to do, behavioral science, organizational development? How did that going to college, playing football, you would think is like the opposite of behavioral sciences and psychology. It's more just Well,
actually, it's interesting you say that because I'll tell you a quick story. Pat Dye was my football coach in college. I'll never forget the first meeting I ever had with Pat Dye. He later went to Auburn. Yeah. I was in East Carolina. And he called me, he says, Grinnell, you think I know a lot about, this first one-on-one meeting with Coach Dye. I said, Grinnell, you think I know a lot about football, don't you? And I said, yes, sir. You were Bear Bryant's defensive coordinator at Alabama, and a couple other things I told him I knew about him. I had done my homework. Yeah. He says, you're dead wrong, Grinnell. He says, all those years I was down in Alabama, those 6 years I was defensive coordinator, I was learning people. Anybody can do the X's and O's. I was learning people. He said, head coaching is about people. And I reflect back on that, and I think that son of a gun implanted something in my head at that first meeting. And I think although I go back to when I was in high school playing basketball, and I remember intramural basketball, and I remember all the fights we get on the tennis courts, on the basketball courts, the fights we get into and hogging the ball and stuff, and nobody was beating it. And I said, looking back, I said, even back then I had the thought that this could be done better. And then when I was in graduate school, to pay for my graduate school, I started a small construction company, did decks, additions, and helped finish off a development, build a couple houses. I was a jackleg. I mean, I was nothing. I came from a construction family, but years ago. But anyway, I had a crew and I did that. But when I was on those job sites, doing the development work, and I looked at all the, the foundation guys. When the framers, the block guys doing the block would blame the foundation guys, the civil guys, and then the framers would blame the civil guys, and then the electricians would blame the guys for putting the studs in the wrong place, and the plumbers would blame it, and finally the HVAC guys would come in last, and it'd be awful for them, and they blame everybody else, and so I realized that there's a lot of lost opportunity in construction and the coordination and teamwork. So I think from an early age, I kind of was sort of geared towards this sort of human systems perspective of things. Looking back, that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
There you go. So how did you mentioned Jim Farr was your martial arts coach?
Yes.
So is that how you met him?
That's how I met him.
Just out of chance, like I'm signing up for martial arts?
Well, you know what? It was out of chance, but I think it was the hand of God, frankly, because I'd actually met him 2 years before I met him.
Okay.
I went to a workshop. I was working in the Fayetteville City Schools as a primary prevention drug education coordinator, and I was training teachers on how to do classroom things that would help prevent kids from making the choice to use drugs. And I was really young. This is the first job out of my master's program. And so I took 6 teachers down to Charlotte for what quote unquote new games workshop, which is kind of non-competitive play. And the theory was teaching kids how to cooperate and play non-competitive play would make them much more likely to be able to build relationships, which is true. So I took 6 teachers down there with me to this thing, and it was not that at all. It was George Leonard teaching a seminar called Getting in Touch with Your Body. And he was a martial arts master. He was like a 6-degree black belt in Aikido, and there's about 200 people in this room doing all this Aikido stuff, and I fell in love with it. The 6 teachers left, got mad at me, and I stuck it out. And when I finally came back, met Jim Farr, went to work for Jim Farr, we were talking one night over a glass of wine, and we talked about this, and he says, "Oh my gosh, John, you're not going to believe this. You know the guy that George Leonard was throwing around to demonstrate Aikido in the front of the room? That was me."
No way.
So I met Jim Farr 2 years before I actually met him when I moved to Greensboro.
Oh my God.
So I think it was meant to be.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. It sounds like.
Yeah.
What made you want to get into martial arts? Was it?
That's a good question. Well, I had studied the martial arts. I met Jim Farr, studied the martial arts with him. I really don't know, to be honest with you. It's just kind of one of those things that happened. I've been an athlete my whole life, and I wanted to find something else to do that kind of was physical and challenging, and I don't remember the exact reason why, but I picked Aikido, and I picked Aikido because it was I wasn't really interested in beating people up and stuff. I was more interested in the dynamics. Originally I was interested in doing jiu-jitsu. And this was kind of the first Aikido I did. I have 3 black belts in martial arts. The first one was in Tomiki Aikido with Jim Farr, and that was sort of standing jiu-jitsu, competitive street fighting Aikido. And that's what I learned from Jim, met with him. And then after that I did Aikikai, and that's what took me to Japan, because I always wanted to study with a master in Japan.
Yeah, that's
so I got to do that, made that happen. I worked for the Japanese government for a couple of years with Betsy, and I went over. And then while I was over there, I also learned one called Iaido, which is the Japanese traditional sword, which I think I told you in the workshop.
Yeah, you told me about the sword. And
yeah.
I was, that was really.
So, but I don't know, it's just sort of a natural, the truth, what it really is, I think, is because my dissertation was on crossing cultures, the psychological impact on people when they go to live in another country for more than 3 years. So my research took me to Japan, and I think that's kind of where it all got, it started earlier, but I think that's where the idea of the sort of the dojos and stuff. And yeah.
How long were you in Japan for?
About 1.5 years one time. The first time I was there 6 months.
Okay.
I did my dissertation research at the University of Hiroshima, then came back, got Betsy, and went back over.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I almost stayed. I almost went to work for Toyota Motor Company.
Well, they're lean manufacturing and total quality and all that. They're like some of the pioneers of that. And I remember you telling me that you did quite a bit of work in that field before as well.
Yeah.
How does tell us a little bit about the quality management and total quality and stuff that work that you were doing with Deming as well, right?
Well, yeah. But early on, when I was working at Farr Associates, we did a lot of in those days. This is many years ago. There's a lot of manufacturing in the United States, and so we get brought into manufacturing companies to do the human systems work.
Right.
But we'd always tie it to quality or to quality circles. So we, one of the things that Jim and I, my mentor, and I figured out early on in my career, which I have been working on forever, is that, technically, businesses, there's not a lot of competitive advantage with businesses that are kind of equal status, equal tier in terms of size, performance. Technically, they all learn the same stuff. They go to the same schools. They read the same books. They go to the same seminars. They got the same mentors. And administratively, they're all using computers now, so stuff can get, and there's a little bit of differentiation in that. But if you think about it, changing organizations for positive outcomes is really about getting the people to decide to change. Because a leader can't change anybody else. You got to create conditions where the follower decides to change themselves.
Right. And
that's a very psychologically and socially oriented thing to learn how to do. And so we work on business problems. We build processes as an organizational development firm where we build business processes, we build psychological, social, and sophisticated processes to be able to address the leadership system, which then can transform an organization or change an organization for the better.
Got it.
So we don't go at it for the business part, because frankly, a lot of our clients are pretty good at the business part. I mean, they wouldn't have been in business, they haven't been pretty good.
Right, exactly.
Part that gives them trouble is getting people to realign and align and get them to change the strategy or behaviors and that kind of stuff. So.
Well, it's like you can design a perfect system or a perfect process, and then you put people into the mix, and then all of a sudden you start getting variations, and you start having to deal with people.
Right.
And I guess that's a lot with organizational development and leadership management is leading people through change and
that's right.
And all that. So, a little bit more about what does Grinnell Leadership offer? What type? You've got consulting services. You've got some educational stuff. Tell us a little bit more about your portfolio of services.
Everything's aligned around being an organizational development firm. Now, the program you went to, the Jumpstart, is very intensive, very sophisticated process for helping people gain a lot of awareness of who they are, what their beliefs are, what drives their decisions and behaviors in a very short amount of time. You went through it.
Right.
So they then can make decisions in alignment with what they want to experience as opposed to what they may automatically be experienced as both person. You got the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, but people don't realize that is a training program, but that's an organizational development intervention. It just happens to be one tool that we have, because our clients will send their executive teams and key people through our Jumpstart program, and that gives them a good foundation in psychology so they understand themselves, understand others, so when they move people through the change process, they kind of can change themselves,
right,
but also know how to work with others to get others to make the choice to change their behavior. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's one of our tools. One of our major tools is the Jumpstart program. The problem with the Jumpstart is it's so powerful that people tend to think that's all we do. In other words, one-trick pony kind of thing. But the fact is our organizational development stuff is equally as powerful, if not more powerful, for the clients that fully engage us. So on the other side, we do strategic execution planning. A company will have us come in. We do a thing called an org scan process, where we interview anonymously interview key people in the organization, bring that up to the executive team for a 2 or 3 day retreat, and then they have to really address the real issues, the hidden opportunities. They can't hide from it. And while we're doing that, we get them to work on their team dynamics, the relationships between the executives, so they learn how to operate a much more highly functioning executive team. Help them make some operational team agreements, and teach them how to lead as a group, not just as individual leaders, and help them break down some of those silos. So the org scan process is something we do frequently. And again, all these are custom. They're processes. They're not content oriented. They're just take the teams through a process where they can make better decisions and know how to make change happen.
Yeah.
Some other things we do is what's called a leadership decathlon, which are used for many different things. We particularly have used it a lot for mergers and acquisitions. You probably know that 70% of acquisitions don't work very well. The value is lost.
Yep.
And what we figured out years ago, it's not because of the technical problems or if they want to keep the people. Sometimes acquisitions are done just to get the customers or capture the market, and they could care less about the people. Or they want the technology. They care about but the companies want to keep the people. That's where the real value is. A lot of service industries, for example, rely on the people to deliver the service and maintain the relationships. So they don't want to lose the people. So we'll come in and help them do a decathlon, with a combined group of the acquired plus the acquirees. And then we get them to learn how to work together over a period of a year, an ongoing intervention, one or 2 days a month with them to get that group to align very quickly around the new organization. A lot of times people don't see that they're actually safer in their jobs and more secure ongoing after an acquisition if the strategy's right. They actually are. Both companies are more sustainable, yet people, because of the transition, the change, their guts get tight and they start looking for all the negative, and we help them move through that quickly so they can see the advantage in the acquisition more quickly than just the fear and the, and does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you go into a company and you do the decathlon, or you have a group for the leadership jumpstart, you guys have a set, process that you guys go through, but with each different group or each different company, how could it be different from one group to the other?
To give you an example, we have a we got a construction company now that that's having us do a decathlon, and they've grown very, very fast. So the CEO is concerned about maintaining quality as they grow really fast.
Right.
So we're going to set up a decathlon program where they actually take a lot of their sort of younger, up-and-coming managers into a decathlon program to teach them how to lead, how to scale, how to lead. Scaling is about leading others, not and a larger scope of responsibility. But also in that process, they're going to have that group come up with what are the 10 key things for a successful construction project. They're going to build that model in that group, and then they're also going to learn how to influence people to start adopting that model across this very large company base. So every project will be analyzed according to 10 or 12 items. So the decathletes, as we call them, actually each decathlon group takes on a significant organizational challenge that makes a big difference in the organization. So that's why I like to say they pay for themselves many times over, because in the construction industry, you can have a great year and one big project goes south on you, everybody loses their bonus. So a process like this, might cost the client $100,000, $120,000, but they're going to save hundreds of thousands of dollars just by having us do that.
Yeah.
So it's a good model. It works well, and then you're also you're preparing the organization for rapid growth. Because if you don't prepare your people to learn how to lead a broader scope of responsibility, when it starts breaking down, then you have order of magnitudes financial problems that you haven't addressed early on.
Right.
So it's really thinking ahead.
So when you think about the issues that, can't, like you mentioned some financial issues that can be caused because of poor leadership or whatever, but, in doing...
Most financial issues are made because of poor leadership.
Okay. That's kind of what I was...
If not all.
That's kind of what I was getting at is, in all the root cause analysis type stuff I've done, you keep, the 5 whys or whatever.
It's always human systems at
the
bottom.
It always gets down to communication. Like communication is always one of the issues.
That's it. Or I don't trust the son of a gun,
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And, I'm trying to come up with a really good example of just the importance of teamwork and people. But I watched this movie, I actually just watched it this weekend. It's called The Boys in the Boat.
I've heard of it.
And it's about the Washington Huskies crew team. And it takes place during the Depression in the 30s. And they have an open tryout to build the junior boat. Bunch of guys that have never rowed crew before. That junior boat, because of, these guys are, living in the Depression, they don't have anything to deal with. It's just brute force and, overcoming adversity. They went on to win the gold medal in the 1936 Olympics in Germany.
Wow.
In Germany during Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
And as I was watching this, I was like, oh, this is such a cool one that I'm thinking about this now, talking to John, is, it comes down to, it's just all about the team and these people that work together.
That's right.
And
that's all it comes down to every time.
It's pretty simple, right?
It's simple, but it's simple like you said it, but actually learning to do it requires you to really understand human nature and to particularly understand yourself, because we always are operating by beliefs that we're unaware of. And if we're operating with an unaware belief, which everybody has, me included, that'll make the decisions for me, and beliefs are always based in past experience. But what's coming in the future and what's on you right now may require a different decision than you've ever made before.
Right.
So leadership is and there's 3 different levels of leadership. There's directional leadership, which is about direction, strategy, that's high level kind of stuff. And then there's interpersonal, which you're talking about, which is the interpersonal dynamics of relationships and more psychological kind of stuff. And there's executional leadership, which is about the nuts and bolts of the technical part of the business or scientific part, getting the right machines in place, getting them organized properly. It's really technical. A lot of what the TQM stuff does and the lean manufacturing is a lot around getting the technology right and then getting people communicating about how to continuously improve that process.
So the belief system. So that's something that I've learned a lot about from you. And But, and, you know, kind of like with that first, you know, in the models that you talk about, but like, you know, when you talked about with BB&T, how they had the 4 layers of, you know,
values.
The 4 values, you know, and I hope we can talk about this, the belief system and stuff. I don't want to like give away any of the stuff that we talk about.
Don't worry about it. This
during
is
the
good.
jumpstart
No,
and
it's
stuff
good.
like
We're
that.
good. We're okay.
But so I mean, the beliefs.
You just can't mention anything anybody else says.
No. I would never. Never.
I know that.
Well, so the belief system, that's the foundation, right?
It is. Guides all your perceptions, your decisions, and your reactions.
Yeah.
And the degree to which you're aware of your beliefs or unaware of your beliefs is the degree to which you're in control or out of control of your leadership.
And so I'm laughing just because, I mean, the way it flows out of your mouth, I can tell you've been doing this for 37 years. But I mean, and those beliefs are based on, like you said, past experiences, right?
Right.
And so, you know, getting to understand your beliefs, being able to change you as a person involves with being able to change your belief system.
I'm not sure.
Am I saying that correctly?
I'll say a little bit. I'm not sure people can actually change themselves. They can change their perspective. They can change their behavior. But the essence of who you are is something beyond belief, in my opinion. There's something more to us as human beings than just that belief system. But the belief system is the operational point where you can actually alter your life for the better. As I like to say, lead your life from choice, not by chance.
Yeah.
Most people live in their lives and leading by chance. They're leading the way I was led, you know, or raised as a kid.
Yeah.
And it may not be the best way.
Yeah.
And but a lot of the beliefs our clients are very successful, so they got a lot of beliefs that are working really well for them. So they're kind of tweaking that, you know, kind of trying to take it to the next level. So we don't work with, you know, there's other places that can work with people that got real significant psychological problems. Our people typically are folks that are operating on sort of how do I reach more of my potential.
Right. So is there a kind of a specific, like, you know, like character design, like a certain type of profile for a person that makes people good leaders?
Well,
that you see?
Well, I think there's 3 elements. And again, this is something we figured out. We talk about that a lot. First off, I've never met 2 leaders that were the same.
Okay.
I've never met 2 people that were the same. If you pay attention, people are not the same. We're all unique in our makeup and our stuff. But I do think there's 3 elements to leaders that really sort of do better than other leaders, short and long term. Okay. The first one, I think they have the ability to step back and analyze a situation from a non-biased position, to kind of look at a situation and look at multiple angles on things and not necessarily be already figured out what to do right away. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So they know enough about their bias to filter it out. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, you know, I don't know. I know my dad was rough on me, so I know I don't get along good with authority figures. I know that I'm going to react to my boss in a certain way no matter what he says or does. I put that on hold. I want to really be curious about what he has to say. That's a leadership move, in my opinion, where you can factor your bias out.
Yeah.
Second level, and I call that clearing the windows of perception, by the way, which is a huge leadership skill. Okay. To be able to step back and take an objective view, as objective as you can. Second one is, once you do that, you got to be able to do what's required to get the job done. You got to be able to do things that are in alignment with the future you want to create. And if that requires you to act differently, that's most often going to be a scary thing to go do. Because we get these habit patterns, and outside if I break the habit pattern, I start feeling lots of fear and worry and concern, rationalize how the end of the world's going to come. Even though it's in alignment with a better future, I'll tend to fight myself in that way and want to go back to the status quo, what I've always done, which is now we know is the wrong thing. Even doing the right thing is we call that creative tension. The difference between anxiety and creative tension is I've got a future I want to create with my company or my family, and I'm doing the new behavior to align with that. And even though it's the right thing, it still will be uncomfortable, but that's creative tension, as I like to call it.
Okay.
And the third part is integrity. I think leaders that, for the long term, do better have a lot of integrity, personal integrity. They'll do the right thing even when nobody's looking. I got a chance to do that today. I was in a parking lot, and my mirror in my truck hit somebody's car, left a mark on it, left a message there. And the little, they'll never know, they'll never know.
Yeah.
No, it's, integrity, Oliver Wendell Holmes said, the price of integrity is constant vigilance. So I made myself do the right thing. That's what leaders do. They do the right thing. Yeah. Second one is organizational integrity, where they do what's in alignment with what everybody's decided where we're headed as an organization. An organization is like a big ship with all these metal plates. And if one of those metal plates is unbolted and out to the side, it's not too long till that ship's going to take on water and sink. Right. And in terms of leadership system, if you get leaders down the organization that are not aligned with where things are headed, they'll slow the ship or sink it. So I think organizational integrity. And the third part I'd like to talk about is societal integrity. I think it's really important that people align with the agreements we make in our country, for example, through the Constitution and civil rights. I think we have to honor those. Mm-hmm. If we're going to change them, we go through due process to change them. We just don't go out and willy-nilly change them or try to manipulate people to change them. I think it's a process we've agreed to. So those are kind of 3 levels, and I think the best leaders tend to do that. And they're going to pay their taxes. Whether there's loopholes, if it's legal, do it. But if it's not, if it's against the law, good leaders won't do that. They won't cross that boundary. Those are 3 levels.
Yep.
In my opinion, that's what I think.
Has those levels, or what makes a leader great, changed over the 37 years, do you think, that you've been doing this?
Nope, not at all. I think historically the best leaders do that in our society. I've not worked with other countries. Like I know some places, some countries in the world, they will take bribes, and no one thinks twice about it and stuff. But in our culture here, I think the companies that maintain the longer term success that I've worked with tend to operate in that manner. They're not perfect, but they tend to be aligned with that particular way of doing business. Mm-hmm.
The creative tension is something that I can really align with.
Given where your company's at right now, you're in that fast growth phase, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I've talked about this with you before, but one of the things that I really took away from the work that we've been doing together is the diagram of the ship. And you've got the water line, right?
Right.
And there's holes in the ship. You got some holes that are below the water line. You got holes that are above the water line.
Yeah.
And basically, what those stand for, those are opportunities for learning.
Exactly.
And if there's a hole below the water line, you can't let that go on.
You got to manage it.
You got to manage that real quick. But if there's some issues above the water line, it's not going to sink the ship. You got to use those as learning opportunities.
Well, I got one of the things. I'll tell you a great story about one of my clients. It'll go unnamed. Very large company.
Yeah.
They had a major breakdown, screw up in their technology platform, so it really impacted a lot of customers. And so I didn't witness this. I heard about this from one of the executives. They told me, says, yeah, our CEO came out. The first thing he said was, tell me who I have to go out and encourage. Think about that.
Who do I have to
Is that profound or what? You think about that as a leadership. Not they screwed up, but who do I need to go out and encourage? Because the assumption was he assumes his people are doing the best they can. They didn't screw up on purpose, and now he wants to go out and give them heart and encourage them to fix the problem. When I heard that, I still get goosebumps when I hear that story. And he's done that more than once either. That was a below the waterline issue, but he still didn't get his panties in a wad, stayed calm, he did the right thing, and gained a lot of leadership, a lot of followership because of what he did.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
And amazing, yeah.
And so at what levels, so you got your CEO, you've got your executive management team, and then you've got more of your kind of, let's call it like middle management. Are there certain parts of leadership that are more specific for that CEO versus the day-to-day middle manager?
So say more, I'm not quite following you. Tell me, say it another way.
We talked about 3 different, 3 different traits of leadership. One was having the vision and more
directional leadership.
Yeah, the directional leadership. And so, do you see those types of those specific types of leadership more eminent in different levels of the organization?
It changes. So when you first start out as an employee, you're mostly technical, implementational leadership.
Yep.
When you become a frontline supervisor, you're going to do less of the doing. You take on a little bit more of the more interpersonal.
Yep.
You're still not doing directional leadership. You're doing more of the interpersonal and technical. And as you get to middle management, it becomes more interpersonal. Middle management is really a large part of making sure that the interpersonal is done correctly, that there's alignment with the senior executive. And then when you get up to the very executive levels and the CEO level, it's almost 90%, probably 90% directional leadership.
Right.
No, probably 80% directional, 10%, probably 20% interpersonal, and 0 technical.
Right.
If it's done right. Now, a company your size will be a little different. You're not there yet, but it'll eventually get to that point. You're probably, you should still do about 30%. You're probably 20% of the technical, probably 60% probably 60% of it would be interpersonal with your people, and then probably 20% is directional. That's my guess at this point for you.
That's probably pretty spot
I'm guessing.
on. Yeah. And then an additional, I'm at like 120%
Well,
right now.
well, the thing is, I can tell you're in a fast scaling. You're getting to a fast growth phase, and I watch you, and you have a lot of marketing skills and ability to sell. So you got to watch. Your big thing is anticipating the growth and making sure that you're doing the things now that you're going to need to be doing later.
Yep.
So you don't wait until you're bigger to do it. You do it now, and you'll screw some things. I always say, if you don't screw things up, you're not doing it right. You're going to break some toys as you're going if you're growing. And you can't get caught up in that. You got to. But then those become opportunities for your people to go in and solve those problems instead of you. So they develop their confidence, develop their technical abilities, that kind of thing.
So after I did the leadership jumpstart, I remember like that first week I was back, I had this, this clarity, this just whole new vision on the world, and like, each week, it's not something that you can do once and you just do it. Right? I guess what I'm getting at is the discipline and the consistency to stay on top of that.
That's why you're in my year program.
Yeah, exactly.
One day a month for a year. And with a group of other 11 executives like you. So that's the advantage, what you decided to do.
Yeah.
Or some clients will actually bring one of my consultants in for a day a month, to be with them. You're not quite big enough to do that, but little larger companies, they bring one of our consultants in for a day a month. It facilitates meetings, coaches the people who've been through jump starts already.
So at the beginning, you mentioned you guys work with small and medium-sized businesses. What, a small business, I think technically is defined as less than 500 employees,
that's a medium to me.
Yeah, so when you say small and medium-sized business, people have different ideas.
I say smaller.
Smaller, okay. People have different ideas of, what that is. But what would be an example of some of the larger businesses that you work with? Like you mentioned First Citizens is one of your clients. That's probably one of the bigger ones. Or
worked with Duke for a long time. Duke Medical did Duke. Lots of this. I'm trying to think. Big boys. In the old days, we worked with First Union National Bank, Wachovia.
Lots of banks, huh?
Yeah. The three areas I've gone into are construction and engineering.
Yep.
Banking and medical. Those are my three. In my career, those are the three biggest areas. Now, we work in all industries because leadership goes across the board. Like your Jumpstart, for example, you had people from 10 different industries, which is kind of what the people like to interact with folks they never get to interact with before. But it's I'm trying to think of some more big ones over the years. Balfour Beatty Construction was a big one we worked with for many years.
Yeah. That's a big company.
Oh, you worked with them for about 10 years. They were a key client. I worked with Turner Broadcasting in the old days, down there with Ted Turner, did that one for 5 years. We did some work with a company, a really good law firm called Ogletree Deakins, which has 1,000 attorneys. We started out with them, they were 50 attorneys, now they're 1,000 attorneys, helped them with their growth.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating, if you want to do a research thing, they're an amazing law firm, very different than any law firm I've ever worked in before.
So tell me, in your early days when you were working, first couple of years in organizational development, tell me a story or something about how, like a mistake that you made that was a really good learning opportunity, or how your mentor kind of let you make a mistake.
I'll never forget one story I tell this to some people. I'm telling it to the world. But we had 15 PhDs in that company. Jim hired doctors, and so we 15 of us, and I had just come to work there, and we were practicing some of the stuff that you saw in the Jumpstart. Not exactly the same, but so he said, Grinnell, get up there and go through one of your go through such and so a process. One of the things so I get up there and I start doing my thing, and all of a sudden he says, stop, and he slams his fist down, and he said, that is the worst blankety blank stuff I've ever seen. If you ever do that with one of my clients, I'm going to fire you the next blanking day. And he just cussed me up. He just knocked me. And I'm a guy that when I was in graduate school was they always had me teaching stuff when I was in graduate school. And I always got the highest marks. Students liked me, it's just like, and he said, Grinnell, says, you're not a professor anymore. You're not a teacher. What you're doing is you're causing people to change their minds. What you're doing is you're educating their brains. What we do is we help them learn how to change their minds. Got it. And that's a very powerful thing that he did. So that was a big embarrassment point. But Jim, early on in my career, I've been consulting more than a year, maybe 2 at the most, and Jim calls me in the office, and actually I tell the story in my next book that's coming out, but Jim calls me in the office, he says, Grinnell, he says, I'm getting some good feedback on you, and a beginner consultant I don't get that kind of feedback on beginner, and he'd been doing this for decades.
Yeah.
I never get feedback so good on a beginner consultant. What are you doing out there? And I said, I have no idea.
Okay.
True story. Yeah. He says, what do you mean you have no idea? I says, well, I go in there, I don't know what I'm doing, so I have to listen to them. They talk at me and talk to me, and then I tell them I don't know, and I go back and think about it for a while, then I come back and share something that I think might work, and it seems to work, and he said, that's good. And that was the moment I think Jim decided to teach me the business, is when he heard that I was really good at emptying my mind and listening. Mm-hmm. And to this day, with all my experience, when I go into a new assignment, every time it's like I've gone brain dead. I literally have it's weird, it's like this blank sheet of paper. I'm anxious because I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But I hang out on that anxiousness and I just listen until I know what to do or what to do. It's a weird propensity I have. But I will say, after all these years, the best consultants that work for me do the same thing. Mm-hmm. Not all of them can do it, but they get too anxious and they want to come up with a solution too quick. But just being able to really listen deeply to the client helps them express it more clearly, what they're thinking about, mm-hmm. but also with more data, I can then ask the right questions. Does that make sense? And so it's kind of a propensity that I've always had. So.
And I would think that if you go in and you're a little bit disarming, you're just a normal guy, you're not coming in as, I know all the stuff, people probably open up a little bit more and they're a little bit more relaxed.
Good point. Very good point.
I would think.
Yeah. I think early on, a little bit in my early years, I was a little bit of a know-it-all and I had trouble, but most of the time I could blank my mind pretty good. Like when you do the workshop with me, I get 12 new people every month coming to workshop. I have no preconceived notion about any one of you. I never read the 360s you all do because I want to listen and take it in.
And then read after,
correct.
Yeah, without having
before the last day we feedback. But when I first meet people, I never figure out what their people are telling them because I want to experience them. Mm-hmm. It's just a propensity. It's a weird.
Do you get nervous still when you have to do big talks or big sessions or just even smaller sessions?
Oh yeah, well I really do. And but I had a breakthrough about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, as I realized that when I'm giving a presentation, that I just do the best I can, mm-hmm. and that I'm giving that presentation to God, to nobody else. And if someone in that group gets something out of it, it's because God got them to hear it, not because I said it. So I relax completely now. I share like with you right now, I'm wide open. Because I know that whatever I share, if someone needs to hear something, they'll hear it. If not, no worries. But I'm not in control. That's kind of a shift for me from egocentric to more God-centric. Yeah. By the way, ego is an acronym. Do you know that? It stands for edging God out.
No way.
No, that's a joke. That's not really.
I feel like we talked a little bit about the ego. There's a book I read by Ryan Holiday called "Ego is the Enemy." I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah, I don't agree with that, but yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I think if you just say it like that, it's probably not the full meaning of what it is. But basically, it's about there's a lot of similarity and synergy. Is that if if you're not aware of your weaknesses, if you're not aware of your blind spots.
If your ego is running you instead of you running your ego, that is a problem.
Yeah. But
because leaders always have strong egos.
Definitely.
That's one reason they come to our workshop is because they got to learn how to get beyond that ego so they can make different choices. So, yeah.
So you mentioned you got another book coming out, but how many books have you written?
2 so far. The next one I did Beyond Belief was my first one in 2014, and then redid it in 2017. And then this year I have the Boss book came out this year, which is a manual or a tool book, as I call it, for a boss and subordinates to engage in a very meaningful conversation, creates trust and followership. Yeah. And then the one that's coming out later this year is called Management Myths, 21 beliefs about management that are dead wrong.
Cool. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one. That was good.
What's your process for writing? I mean, is it you just lock yourself in a room and?
The first book, that's what I did. Second book, I've been accumulating questions the boss book has 240 questions in it to discuss discussion starters, and I had accumulated those over the past 15, 20 years, so that wasn't very hard. And I built a theory to help people understand it. And then this one really is a compilation of a lot of my short writings I've done, just improved them, put them all together in a fashion that will help an executive team have some very important discussions and perceptions around leadership at the highest levels. In other words, things that help them build a common language and model of leadership that they, over time, if they read all the chapters together. So it's kind of a workbook for an executive team is what it's designed to be.
Got it.
Yeah.
So we talked about how you help other people build their businesses. What's it like trying to build your own business?
Well, that's a good question. I really haven't tried that hard to build it as I probably should have. To be honest, I was sort of addicted to doing the doing for a long time. The last year or so, I've been focused on building, working on the business more than I have in the past. And I've got such an amazing team now.
Yeah, you do.
It's pretty incredible, what they do, what they can do. So the last year to 2 years, I've been stepping back, doing, more of the building it so it can grow. But until then, I was kind of, I liked it small.
Yeah.
The company that I was partners with Jim in, we had 35 people. We had 15 PhDs, and I really loved the interaction with the PhDs. I learned so much from those folks. It was incredible. The talent we had in that company was amazing, and for me, it was a little bit large. I kind of like the smaller organization than the big one.
So you like more the doing, or you enjoy more like the doing the sessions, actually executing some of the work as opposed to.
Yeah, but now it's kind of more like, I actually, in the initial phases, I will help design processes still, but I won't go execute the processes.
Got it.
I enjoy the design part, so.
Yeah.
But I'm building the business now to grow it. I mean, I've got some great consultants, and my whole goal now is to grow it so I can feed them more, and I'm enjoying doing that. Actually, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
So, I got tired of traveling. I'm a million miler on 2 airlines, and so I got my fill of traveling over those years, and I'm sort of done with that, frankly. If someone wants me to travel to work with them, they're going to pay a lot of money because I have no desire to travel anymore. I'll drive to Raleigh and I'll drive to Charlotte. I'll go to DC once in a while.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to.
It gets old. It's brutal.
I did it for 33 years.
My gosh.
2 flights a week, roughly.
Yeah.
Average.
I grew up. My dad was in sales, and he was on a plane Monday and coming back Thursday night or Friday.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not for the faint of hearted.
Well, it was in the early days. I thought I was pretty cool, flying all over. But the last 5 years, I started flying first class to kind of get my motivation for flying back, and that kind of wore out. At first class didn't even make a difference. And after riding the back of the bus for 25 years, I mean, I got in the front of the bus. I thought it worked for 5 years, but then after that, I just said, and so now I'm really coaching, developing my team, and of course they're so good they don't need much, but sometimes they'll come to me and say, hey, what should I do here? So, but it's funny, I was thinking about Jim, my mentor, who was 34 years older than me. I remember in the early days, I would go to him and I'd say, Jim, I got this problem in a client, what should I do? And he'd always have an answer what to do, and I was so amazed he knew so much. And now I realize people come to me and ask me questions, and I got an answer what to do. It's like, God, I'm Jim now. It's kind of like,
yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, I feel like when you're outside of the details and when you're not fully involved in the day-to-day, it's easier to see things more clearly,
more
or
energy.
just not be sucked into the detail.
Yeah. So.
Because I noticed some of the biggest problems I have are, when I'm working with a client and I'm getting sucked into the detail work. It's like I need myself to ask. I need to ask other people questions, and it's like those are questions that I would know the answer to, but for some reason, because I'm working on it in such a detailed level, I don't know the answer to this. It's like you get blinded by it almost.
Well, that's okay. Then you can just ask one of your people to answer it for you, and
exactly.
Then they feel good about it themselves. How big do you want your company to be?
The reason I want to grow is obviously, there's economic incentives, right? But those economic incentives are because I just want to enjoy life and I want to be able to do cool stuff, right? And and feel secure and be able to, you know, provide for my family.
Right.
But there's also a big part of the growth is that the level of service that I see with a lot of professional services firms, primarily in the bookkeeping and accounting, it's just not good. And I feel a obligation to help other people.
That's great.
And so that's really, I think, my why to growth. And so to answer your question is, you know, I don't know exactly, but I'd like to be able to impact as many lives as I can, and to be able to do that as a professional services company. The only way is to grow, right? We're not manufacturing widgets. We're not developing software where you have crazy leverage. It's, you know, one, you know, account manager can oversee 8 to 10 clients, right? That's the formula. And so,
yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, I think you can take it as far as you want to, frankly. Yeah, and I think it's going to go fast for you. So just be thinking ahead.
Yeah.
Build it.
Well, I appreciate you taking time to come on and speak with me, and for everything that you've done to help me so far.
Well, thank you for letting me do this. I enjoy it. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Good. Cool. Thanks, John.
All right, thank you.